Hello. Well, this is our floor work section for Pilates. You can add this on to the standing section I put on here, or you can do it on its own. You're just going to need enough space to be able to lay down full length, put your arms up above your head and out to the side without hitting anything. You may like to have a towel or a blanket or cushion off the sofa in case you need it, but that's really all that you will need for this. So we're going to start laying down onto the mat, knees bent. I'm just going to do a little bit of a warm up. We're going to bring your feet and your knees together. Well, mobility really more than warm up. Feet and knees together. Just get the tailbone to lengthen away from you a little bit and arms out to the side. We want the chin just tucked in if we can. And we're going to roll the knees to one side and the head in the opposite direction. And then draw the tummy button in as you come back to centre. And then you'll change, knees one way, head in the opposite direction. So, times like this, we need to be thinking about mobility. Get the mobility going through the joints, through the spine, just gently. We're not trying to force anything, but we're just trying to get some movement and articulation in the vertebrae, and that's going to increase the blood flow, flush out all the rubbish that's there. It also helps to settle down the nervous system a little bit. So don't worry about how far you go, working with your breathing. So remember with Pilates, it's all about working with the pace of your breath. So we're breathing wide into the rib cage, ribs going out to the side. So we get this nice flowing movement and this thoracic breathing. Don't be breathing up here. Probably been breathing up here quite a lot if you've been a bit stressed like me, or you've been a bit anxious about everything that's going on. So let's try and breathe into the rib cage. Knees one way, head in the opposite direction. And then we're going to come back to centre, and we're just going to take our feet apart slightly. So heels apart once, toes in line with your heels. That should bring them about in line with your hip bones. We're going to gently just tip your pelvis backwards and forwards. Just that feels nice. I can feel my lower back lengthening. Yeah, gently backwards and forwards. So lower back into the floor and then let it go. And then find that point where it's sitting flat with the mat. Shoulder blades down the back, chin tucked in. If you feel like you're looking towards the back of the room a little bit and it's hard to bring this in, this is when you can get your cushion or your towel or your blanket. We're going to put that, look where I put it, underneath the back of my head here, and that encourages the chin in. What I don't want is it under my neck here, which is just going to help me to get that hyperextension in the neck. So I want it up here, and that's going to lengthen, gently lengthen into the back of the neck, chin tucked in. But if you don't need it, we'll take it away. When our arms and our legs switched off, rib cage and pelvis connected, breathing into the rib cage so the ribs are expanding out to the side, thoracic breathing. And it's that breath that's going to determine the speed that you move. Your arms and your legs are switched off. And we're just going to gently think about belly button drawn in toward you. Not suck it in like that, lower back down on the floor. Just gently, just in towards you slightly. So, I just want you to imagine you're going to lift one foot off the floor and then just lift it up a millimetre. You should feel that engage across the front. And then let it go down. And then on the other side, imagine you're going to lift it and then lift it just a millimetre and feel that engage across the front. Now as you're doing this, picture in your mind, think about a ruler and how big a millimetre is. If you lifted your foot a millimetre, how much daylight would it leave underneath your foot? So have a go at that. If you're lifting your foot up here, yeah,
6 inches, 8 inches, foot off the floor. Then the work comes into the thighs. We don't really feel a great deal here. Yeah, so this is just about making the pelvis stabilised. Doesn't look like there's a lot going on, but what we should be feeling is some work here as these stabilisers have to work. So you can just stay with this one. This is a lot harder than it looks when you do this consistently. And we can start to float the leg up so it comes to 90 degrees at the hip and the knee. So shin wants to be parallel with the mat. When I take it back down to the floor, it's just like a feather on the mat. Other foot a millimetre away, and then float up. So don't be rushing these. Take your time, concentrate, and think about where you want to feel it. If it turns into this, there's not really a lot going on. Alright, so we've got to think about it, a millimetre first, then it floats. Then we come back down, engage the core, just a millimetre, and then it floats. So, what you should be feeling is like a belt low down across the pelvis here. If you're feeling it in your lower back, or you're feeling it in your thighs, then I'd like to go back to the first exercise where we were just here. If you feel okay, then we're going to hold the leg there. We're going to think about picking the other foot a millimetre off the mat, and then we're going to float that one up. Now, what I'm hoping is now we're feeling this really strong across the front. If you felt that kick into your back, come out of the exercise, reassess, find your neutral. Maybe go back to the first one we were doing, or the second one, single knee fold, or try this one again. A little bit more concentration. Pubic bone is drawn towards you. Pubic bone drawn towards you. Rib cage drawn down. Legs, they are floating on water, these legs. They're just floating. Think about it. Make your legs light, floating on water, and feel how that changes everything here. Are we breathing into the rib cage? Shoulders down the back. So, we can keep it like this. If you start to feel the legs kick in, that's okay. Just means you need to come out the exercise, reassess, and come back into it. If you're okay holding it where you are, you stay there. So we can come in and out as many times as we need to. When we get there, we're counting our breaths. Count the breaths. So again, we can keep it just like this, or if you're strong enough to maintain that, then as you breathe out, you can take your arms up above your head. And as you breathe in, you bring them round and down. And now the challenge is, you tell those legs you don't need them. Because I suspect now, the thighs have kicked in. So, switch off the thighs, switch them off. Get the rib cage down the back. This is not about being able to do this. I haven't got any core stability when I'm doing this. Rib cage down, legs switched off. It's not about the arms, it's not about the legs. It's about what's going on in your middle. So I know some of you will still be going on this, and some of you will be thinking, I need a break, Claire. So if you need a break, that's fine. Legs go down. Reassess. Find your neutral. Come back into it. 10 minutes a day of this. Going to be amazing when you get back to class. So, when we've done the last one of these, we're going to let the feet go down onto the mat. We're going to come into one of my favourites, shoulder bridge. So you're going to tip your pelvis, squash your lower back into the mat, squash it down. Then lift the hips and roll up into a shoulder bridge. We'd like to get a straight line from the knee through the hip, all the way to the shoulder. Look how that's drawn my chin down. And then we'll roll back down one vertebrae at a time. Lower back on the mat before your hips. Take a breath in at the bottom. And then we'll tip the pelvis, squash your lower back into the mat, and we'll roll up. And we'll come all the way up into your shoulder bridge. Breath in at the top. Lovely stretch on the front of the thighs. And then we'll roll back down, scoop out the tummy, lower back down before the hips hips, I forgot to say, if you had your cushion or your blanket underneath here, you're going to ditch it down. Let's get rid of it. We want to naturally try and think about drawing the chin in as we go up. So working in the glutes, lengthening at the front, lengthening the back of the neck, and also getting this movement through the spine. Remember, when you're in an inverted position, it's much easier to think about lifting pelvic floor. So when you get there, think about lifting the pelvic floor up towards you. We've all got one. So lift it up, male and female, all the same. Well, slight differences, but the pelvic floor the same. So when we get to the top, we're going to hold it up there. Come into that shoulder bridge, engage, feet light on the mat, breath in, arms above the head. Feel your glutes switch on. Roll back down, one vertebrae at a time. Lower back, down before the hips. And then the arms will go down. Breath in at the bottom. Tip your pelvis, squash your lower back into the mat. Roll up, shoulder bridge. How are we doing those knees? Are they in alignment with the hips, or have we done something funny with them? Breath in at the top. Roll back down, one vertebrae at a time. Lower back down before the hips. So we can stay with this one, or we can add on the leg pull. Tip the pelvis and roll. Breath in at the top. Hold it up there. Fix that pelvis nice and strong. As you breathe out, lengthen the leg away. I want to just extend that line. In breath as I come back in, and then I'll change, extending the line. In breath as I come back in. Out breath as I roll back down, scoop out the tummy, lower back down before the hips. And then the arms come down. Now if you've got cramp in your hamstrings, you're not ready for that one. You need to stay with the first one, where we didn't add the leg pull. If you're not getting cramp in your hamstrings, then you can stick with this one. Spirit level, cross the front of your pelvis. As the leg goes away, the pelvis should stay completely level. And then roll that down, one vertebrae at a time. Breath in at the bottom. So again, tip the pelvis and roll. Breath in at the top. Out breath. In breath. Out breath. In breath. Roll back down. In breath at the bottom. Oh, it feels so good. One more of those. Breath out. Breath in. So we get this nice opening in the chest, and this goes up as well. So lots of things going on here. Rolling back down. In breath as we come back down. So when we've completed this one, while we're here, we've been to the effort of laying down on the floor, we're going to stretch our hamstrings. We'd usually use a band. You can use a tea towel, use your towel or your blanket, a belt, I forgot. You could use your top. Don't do this at home if you haven't got a vest on underneath, alright? So, what you're going to lengthen, back of the knee away, or at least not if the windows are open. So, knee away, sole of the foot sitting flat onto the ceiling. Can we bring the big toe or the little toe towards you so that foot feels flat? You're looking for a straight line here. I'd rather that it was straight and it was there. That's going to be better than it being all the way up here and it looks a bit like that. So lock out the knee. Get it away from you, push the heel away, even if it's out here. We can keep it like this. And we can stay just here. We want to talk to that muscle, talk to them, and tell them they've just contracted now. They're trying to protect themselves. So just tell them they can relax and stay here. So we can stay just like this, or we might be able to lengthen this other leg away. Okay, but we don't want to lengthen the leg away at the expense of that. That's not great. Straight. And then we'll change over and we'll do So, how do we feel on this side? We'd really like both legs to be the same, but often one side of the body's a little bit more flexible than the other. So you can work on this while you're fixed to the house. Tailbone down, hip anchored to the mat, push the heel away and have a look at your foot. Yeah, if you're used to supinating or pronating with the foot, that changes what's going on in the legs. So sole of the foot flat with the ceiling, knee pressed away. Even if it's here, straight leg, a straight one, better than that. Yeah. Bottom leg, if you can, take it away. If you can't straighten the bottom leg without letting the top leg go, keep the bottom leg bent. This one's your priority. That's what we want to do. So we want at least a minute here on these stretches. Take a bit of time, work on your breathing. Good. Better. Good, and then we're going to push ourselves up to a seated position. And let's just sit up nice and tall and just do a little bit of a rotation. First, we're going to sit tall. You can sit on your cushion or your blanket if it's hard for you to sit up tall, or you can sit on a book. It goes right underneath. If you find yourself a little bit in this position and you can't sit up, then just stick something underneath, not sitting on it, just underneath your tailbone, so you feel like you're almost sliding off it, and that will help you to sit up nice and tall. Yeah, don't mind if your legs are bent or they're straight, do whatever you like. Thumbs on the breastbone, fingers on the chin, grow tall, rotate. In breath, come back to centre, rotate. In breath, come back to centre. So, just a bit of move through the thoracic spine. And I think that'll do. That must be our 10 minutes